Does tipping demean our profession? All on today's podcast. Check it out. Let's do it.
Salon owners are some of the most amazing people on planet Earth. The only problem is sometimes their hearts are so big and they give so much of themselves to their staff and guests that it creates unintended consequences. Our goal is to change the industry by elevating the way the rest of the world sees salons, spas, and barbershops and give it the credibility that it truly deserves. This is the Salon Owner Evo Revo Show.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Salon Scale, allowing you to charge by what you know, not by what you feel. What's going on, everybody? It's Jason Everett and Doug Campbell. Good morning, Doug. How are you?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Dude, doing super good. Excited to be doing another podcast with you today, talking about all things related to tip, related to tax, related to all this, because I think we recently had a conversation come up inside the Academy around the argument was made that tipping demeans the profession, right? Mm-hmm. Is that, you know, doctors are professionals and they don't get you don't tip your doctor, you don't tip your dentist, you don't tip, you know, other professionals that have to go through a licensing process. Tipping is a demean. It makes you think that you're a valet or you're a restaurant server, something like that. And I want to know if you agree or disagree with that statement. Does tipping demean the profession? Is that part of the problem? I want to know. Do me a favor, type in the chat, and we're going to share our thoughts with you on that today. Doug's got some heavy thoughts. I got some heavy thoughts that I'd love to share with you because I think, it's a real question. I think it's a great, valid question. And then we're also going to talk today about how tipping plays out inside the salon. Because we have people who are using Venmo and Cash App and all those other things to figure out how tips work. We have a lot to say about it. It's all on today's show. So, Doug, as they're typing in the chat, I'd love to find out. Do you think tipping is demeaning to the profession? Let's talk about it, and let's also hear what came up on that call.
Yeah, I personally don't think so. I think
you had a definition of tips, right? What's your definition of tips?
Right. To ensure prompt service.
To ensure prompt service. Tips, TIPS.
Acronym for tips, to ensure prompt service. Yeah, and it's the way that it's been set. I think it's the head game of, if I do that, then but think about how you're thinking about people that receive tips. Mm-hmm. And so maybe that's part of head trash.
Maybe that's problem number one is that you're looking down on people who receive
tips. You're looking down on these other people that are professional waiters, professional bartenders, professional whatever that get tipped, and somehow or another that's are they demeaned because of what they've got? And I understand that getting respect for the industry, because the industry definitely has a respect problem for sure.
Well, I mean, that's why the mission of the Academy is to elevate the world's perception of the salon and spa industry. I mean, that's a big part of what we do. But I think, talking about, okay, we're going to change our salon to no longer accept tips because we're going to change the profession. Like, you're kind of attacking a whole different beast there. And there's some big pitfalls. So if you've considered that, or if you've talked about it, do me a favor and say considered it in the chat, because it's come up in our Academy. We want to talk about it because I think there's some really interesting things to be aware of around it.
Yeah, we had one of our Academy members talk about that she had done it. When one of ours brought it up and said, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing this," and it just so happened on that same call, there was a lady that had done it. Of course, she had done it when she was booth rental. Now she's in salon commission world. Got her own salons going along. But she said, she thought it was great idea. I mean, and it was that whole thing. I want to be a professional. I understand where that's coming from.
Right.
But she said she struggled with getting her guests to accept this new norm.
Because they're still trying to tip her, right?
Yeah, they're still trying, even though she raised her price, they're still trying to tip her because they felt like, this is part of our relationship has changed. And I want to show my appreciation. Mm-hmm. And so that inadvertently the stylist is going, I don't want your appreciation. And so that's kind of a weird relationship.
Yeah, it's weird. Well, and remember too, like this is like a cultural norm, which by the way, tipping outside of America in a lot of situations is not allowed. Like you don't tip in a restaurant in UK, like maybe, and if you do, it's very, very minimal, but in America, it's very rude if you don't tip in America. So you got to understand, like culturally, we're talking about America and tipping. So, are you trying to change an entire American culture and say, I want to tell every single person that comes to the door, like the culture is different, the context is different inside my salon.
Right. And yeah, so the reason I'm a big fan, I come from waiter world, from bartender world.
Yeah, you've been around in all those different
and I know that it's an incentive. I mean, if I know if I give the best service possible, and so then what's going to happen if you all of a sudden all bartenders, all wait staff, all hairstylists are all on just an even playing field, then what's the advantage of? Yeah, you want to give good customer service, but whenever you know it actually affects your income, it's a big difference. And this is what. So the lady that had done it, she went through, raised her prices by 20% and all this. She brought in $34,000 less the year that she did that.
Yikes! As an individual, $34,000 less.
Yes, $34,000 less. I mean, not net take home, but in her gross.
No, but
sales.
just because of what even though she had raised the prices, she still was suffering in the rest of that.
Yeah,
and I
because
think
it made some of the clients uncomfortable. Some of the clients didn't like the 20% increase.
Right, so they left.
Think about the mindset of that. So now then we're into forced tipping. Is that what I'm hearing?
Right, exactly.
Right. You're just going to force the tip out of me.
That had come up when I worked with a bunch of spas. It was so funny, man. I was working with Massage Envy, and there was a bunch of people that were in the camp of like, we need to require a 20% tip, otherwise I don't want to go to work. And I was like, so you don't care if like to me, I'm looking at like, if I get an amazing massage, I'm going to tip really well. And like, again, it removed that barrier of like an increase in service, because it is such literally in this scenario, a hands-on service. Like you're interacting directly with a person, and there is a gradient of it being good or bad, depending on what's going on. And like a tip is some level of like, hey, this was much better than normal, or this was whatever, like it was worse or it was better. And I thought it was very interesting that the people who were very in favor of like required tipping were the people that I'm like, you probably need to work on yourself and increase why you're not getting tips. That might be a good sign to you to say you need to get better at something.
Yeah. And it's funny because some people brought up that, on the respect thing, it's like doctors and lawyers don't get tipped. And
sure. Okay. Fair point.
Right. And my view on that is, damn, I wish they did.
Because they might show up on time.
Right. I mean, maybe I wouldn't waste an hour and a half at the doctor's office because he's 45 minutes behind. Yeah. I did have a great experience the other day with my cardiologist, by the way. It was efficient. Got in, checked in, was back in the room. I was in and out of there in 20 minutes total, which was perfect. But there's other times with other doctors that, but there's the whole thing. It's like if they knew that a part of their income was based on how
they might show up different,
how comfortable the waiting room was, how you got treated through that whole process. Same thing with the lawyer, they're going to charge you that. It would be nice if part of that rate was if you're successful. And of course, injury law is that way. Which is why that's a very lucrative thing for both sides of that equation.
The lawyer, the better they do, the more they get paid. Well, I'll say this, like, I've been on a lot of tours. That's another place. Like I love when I go on vacation to go on tours places, and there's almost always tips involved in some sort of tour experience. And like it's really fascinating. My wife and I did a 2-week tour of Italy for a honeymoon, and they had suggested tips, and they basically said like, look, if you really enjoyed your experience, here's the here's the tip. If you didn't enjoy it, here would be a suggested tip. And if you, if you thought it was the best thing of your entire life, here would be a suggested tip. And I was just at a paragliding place this weekend down in San Diego. It said the same thing. It was like, if you enjoyed your experience, $20. If you really enjoyed it, $30. And if you thought it was mind blowing, $50. Like it kind of gave you a range. And I think to your point is anytime there's some hands-on control of the level of the experience, right? And it's not government subsidized or billed to the insurance companies or whatever other thing, that is where the tip, at least in America at the moment, that's where it's controlled. And I want to bring this up because I mentioned to you right before we started the show, is there's a restaurant here in town. It's a Thai food restaurant, which by the way, I learned something interesting about Thai food restaurants. I'm totally going on a tangent. Thai food restaurants are subsidized by the government in Thailand. They subsidize and help give loans to people to open Thai restaurants to increase awareness of Thailand, to get more visitors in Thailand. If you didn't know that, that's a random fact I just know. Anyway, this Thai restaurant, who doesn't charge for tipping? I went in the restaurant, sat down, and there's a big sign at the table that says, we have increased our wages to pay a reasonable wage to all of our servers and our staff, and we split up the pay equally amongst the servers, bussers, cooks, everybody. So there's no need to tip, and you will not be, you are not allowed to tip on your bill, like straight up. And their prices are a little bit more expensive, and that's how they've handled that. Now, I mean, good for them. Like that, they're trying something different. They're doing that. But I wonder, like, what does that do for them on hiring staff? If it's like, well, you can work here and you have a flat rate, it might be a little bit higher, but there's no opportunity for increase. So are they going to get the best wait staff? Well, no, the best wait staff is going to figure out what country club can I go work at? What high-end restaurant can I go work at? Because they know that they can make the most amount of money in that type of environment. That's the greatest opportunity for them.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing is like because we're talking about. I just think it's going down the wrong road to try to get the respect thing because I don't know of any salons. I question the people on that cause. Has anybody have your staff clamoring to go to a non-tip model?
Right.
I mean,
They're like, I'd really like to go to no tips.
right, has that ever come up? And it was no. And I said, are any of you getting pushback that your clients don't like tipping and wish they didn't have to tip?
Right.
And it's not. It's like so you're not
So what are you
solving
trying to solve?
the two groups that you're serving as a business, your stylist and your clients. Neither one of them want it.
They're good with the arrangement.
And you're causing a disruption for no reason.
Yeah.
I think if the more respect we need as a profession, I think is everybody in the profession acting more like a professional. I think that's
Right.
that's more of the solution. And how can we do that? But I think the tip thing, I want people to, I mean, of course I want a standard of service, but I want people going above and beyond our standard of service.
Which
I
is
want
what
them-
tipping, encourages. So,
Right.
so I want to leave this quick thought, and we got to take a break. Is that there's a general rule that Doug and I talk about. It's the rule of 3 for your salon company. Is it good for the business? Well, I should say it this way in reverse order. Is it good for the client? Is it good for your staff? And then is it good for the business? It has to meet those 3 criteria, right? Is it better for the client? If you're trying to do anything, you want to create a new change, you want to create bring in new shampoo bowls, you want to renovate, you want to whatever. Is it good for the guest? Is it good for your staff? And is it good for the business? If it doesn't meet that criteria of good for all 3, the idea needs to be thrown out. It really does. Because if you just do something selfishly for you as the business, that's a problem. If you do something that's just in the guest's best interest, but the stylist is pissed off and the business suffers, that's not good either. So it's got to meet the criteria of all 3 of those in order to do it. When we come back, Doug, let's talk about raising the level of professionalism in the industry and how you can make sure your staff is doing that. We got to take a short break. We'll be right back.
Hey, HPSA listeners, let me ask you this. Are you tired of not knowing what your hair color is costing you on every appointment and watching it chew up your profit? Well, with Salon Scale, we take the guesswork out for you. Using a mobile app paired with a Bluetooth scale, Salon Scale will tell you exactly what your color is costing you on every bowl mix down to the gram. As you mix, Salon Scale will also digitally store your formulas and track how much product is being used in real time, so you can manage your inventory, cover your expenses, and generate more profit in your salon. Use promo code HPSA10 to get 10% off an annual subscription. Salon Scale, the new standard for mixing color.
Welcome back. We're talking all things tip related, and is that demeaning to the profession? Doug, we were just saying before the break, there's 3 things. It's got to be good for the business, good for the stylist, and good for the guest. If it doesn't meet that criteria, it's not going to be a good overall thing for the business to run. But we talked about this. It's like, what can we do to really increase the level of professionalism inside the salon? And I want to bring this up because tipping is like, everybody wants to talk about tipping because they want to know, like, should we use, should we use a tippy, or should we, let them do cash, or what? We've got the tax tip credit thing that's going on right now, and people are trying to figure out, like, do I report my tips? Are people doing it correctly? And like, I think that's one of the most unprofessional things that we deal with in this industry is the way tipping is handled, and that creates a lot of challenges. Number one challenge that it creates is that people don't report their tip income, and it says like the average stylist in America earns less than $30,000 a year. A lot of times because the tip income is not reported. That's probably the biggest like thing that everybody knows, that people go, well, I get my cash tips. I don't report those. So, whether that's a restaurant or a salon or anything else, that's one of the most underreported things that brings the profession down. And so when people are applying for school and they're like, their moms are looking at, should you be in this industry? They're like, you can only make 30 grand a year. Why do this? As opposed to understanding the stylists make 100K plus a year, like high paying jobs in the industry, but the industry doesn't always report tips. That's one.
Yeah. I think that, because it used to be I don't report my cash tips.
Right.
And now then with modern technology, you've got Venmo, PayPal, Cash
Cash
App.
app. Right.
Yeah, all those that are coming in, and there's some erroneous conclusions have been made that, oh, that's just like handing cash. We just don't have to touch money, and it goes to my account. That's great. And now
Right.
there is a
And I don't have to report it. The government will never know. This just gets to be sent over to me.
it is a electronic trail of money, and it can, unlike cash. So I mean, and I think a lot of people aren't aware that earlier this year there was a law passed that Venmos, PayPal's, and the like, Cash App, have to report if there's over $600 of income in your Venmo account, then it has to be reported to the IRS. And what just happened, congratulations, there's 87,000 more people working at the IRS. And guess what they're going to be looking at?
Yeah. Digital cash apps.
They are looking for people that are trying to work in the dark market and that there's income coming in. And so if you don't know the way that the IRS,
Let's just say this: full dark markets on crypto. If you really want to go off the grid, go full crypto and see what you can do. But
right.
if you're in a gray, let's call this gray market of PayPal, Venmo, Cash App, etc. This is where they're now starting to crack down, and it's becoming more trackable. To your point,
right? Yeah, it's very trackable. I mean, it's like it's all there. It can be pulled up. And what a lot of people don't realize about the IRS, when the IRS comes for you, it's opposite of the way that we interpret justice in our country. Justice in our country is you're innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah, in the legal system, that's how it works, but not with the IRS.
In IRS land. Administrative law is completely different.
Totally.
So IRS falls under administrative law, and in their world, you're guilty until you prove you're not. So if they see the income, they say,
you got to pay it.
We're counting all this as income. You have to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt that it wasn't income. Right. And so if you've got things that are recurring every 4 weeks, Jenny,
you've got 6 people a day paying you for lunches.
Right. Or because I've heard one say, well, just tell them not to call it hair. It's like, they're a lot smarter than that.
It's not, it's like, just saying like reimbursement or shoes or furniture, it's not going to happen. I mean, they're going to look for, and this is the thing, right? They're going to look for the pattern. And I hope you're not watching this saying like, well, here's how I can scam the system. But I think the idea is, Doug, is that it's much easier, whether it's in the salon and you are collecting the tip through the front desk, or through cash. That's an easy way to do it. And then the salon, the responsibility of the salon is to report that income to make sure it's counted for a couple of reasons. Yes, it will be reported and actually be taken out of your paycheck from a taxation standpoint, but it's also good for the industry to be able to report it. And just like any other income that you make, it's logged by the government. They understand what's going on. If that's a different problem, move to another country where they don't take taxes, or move to a state that's tax friendly, a little more tax friendly, or whatever it is for you. But the idea is, if you're making money in the US, the government wants to have a piece of it. That's just how it works, right? That's a big part of it.
And I mean, the thing is, just go ahead and that's one of the things. I mean, obviously, if you want to start a political movement and get rid of taxation,
then run with that.
Go for it. But it's like I've always told the boys, you need to learn the rules and play the game really well.
Right, and play and just understand the rules and play. Don't try and change the rules, because if you start messing with changing the rules,
don't try to learn the rules and cheat the game. That's not what I said. What I said was learn the rules and play the game really well. Because there are things you can get good tax professional advice. They can guide you on what are legal ways to reduce your tax burden. But not reporting income is not one of those ways. And and the sad part about it is a lot of people that are underreporting their income are the same people that are getting benefits from the government.
Sure. Yeah, like how do I keep my income below a certain level and all this other stuff.
It's like it's everybody, according to wherever you're falling in it, just play the game the way the game's done. If you want to change the rules, fortunately, we live in a country that you can change the rules. It may take a while to change the rules.
You can try to change the rules. At least you have the opportunity to work to change the rules. If you want.
Right. You got the most impact in your local area, then the next in your state, and the next in national. But you can do that.
There are opportunities to do so.
Right.
Here's what I want to make sure we hit on this is that there's a couple other challenges, and most of you guys know this. I mean, if you're watching the show, I'm assuming you're not. If you're watching our show, you're probably not a booth renter that's like, making $30,000 a year and keeping your tips on the side. That's probably not who you are if you're watching our show, because we deal with a lot of salons that are much bigger. But if you are like, hey, it's time to figure this out, because I think one of the biggest detriments of doing something like that And I've been in that mode. I mean, I come from small family business, small business family America, like where it's like, oh, we'll do some cash deals over here, whatever. Like I remember that when I was growing up. And it's one of those things where you don't realize how much that actually hurts you later by trying to play the game smaller. So when you do that is like, and you only show that you report that you make $30,000, I keep using that number, but like $30,000 a year instead of $50,000 a year. Well, now when you go to buy a car or you go to buy a house, they're like, but you only make $30,000 a year. You're like, well, not really. Let me show you where my cash is. They're like, look, they don't count cash under the mattress as money, right? You have to go through the banking system, go through the credit system, go through all those things in order to your point, Doug, to play the game, right? So when you report your income, you're actually setting yourself up to grow into a bigger life. And don't get me wrong, if you're making like under $50,000 a year, maybe it's not as big of a deal if you cheat a little. And I'm not saying don't cheat, because I think still cheating is cheating. But I'm just saying the government's not up in your business as much. But as soon as you make $100,000 a year, you want to start making $150,000 or $200,000 a year, the government is up in your business. And if you're a business owner and you take that mindset of like, when I was small, I did this, but now I'm a business owner, I'm earning $100,000 a year, $200,000 a year, $300,000 a year, gross top level income. But what's going to start to happen is at $500,000, and then all of a sudden at $1 million, the government is up in your business, right? They are all up in there trying to figure out what they can get and what's going on. And to your point, you are guilty until proven innocent in the eyes of the government. So if you're allowing your staff on your team to not take cash tips on the side, report their cash tips. I saw this the other day that people had on their Instagram, that they had like a tipping option on their Instagram. So you just tip them directly, and not have to go through the salon. Or people just go, oh yeah, like just send me that money over here, or do it on the side. I think that's super dangerous. It gets you into a spot where you're potentially at risk. And again, if it's more than $600, like if you're a decent stylist, you're gonna get more than $600 a year in tips.
Yeah, and one of the things too that I think is on the owner side, because I know, it's like, okay, well, if they don't report them, then I don't have to pay matching taxes on them.
Right. Oh, sure. Easier for you. Again, good for you. Maybe good for the stylist. Like that's dangerous though, right?
Right. Because there again, just like if you're talking about government funding, and if you're for a program, if you're taking money away from the government, it should be,
they don't like that.
Right. It's the rules. But now, and talking about being able to change, there is Professional Beauty Association has lobbied a group, and there is legislation that's been floating around on Capitol Hill to treat tips the same way they do in the restaurant industry, where you get a tax credit at the end of the year to help offset what you had to match and pay. But just because you have to match, you can't say, I don't like that, so I'm going to avoid that.
Right.
You're going to
take it into my own hands to just change the law.
You'll get popped. And, and it even goes to people. I never forget, I had a client one time said, well, I'm trying to choose whether I want to pay my people 1099 or W2. And I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, well, I know that if I do them 1099, it's a lot better for me financially than if
because I don't have to pay their taxes.
Right. I think that's not how that choice works.
That's not the option.
It's the model that you use dictates which way that you pay them. If you're treating them like an employee, you have to treat them as a W-2 and do W-2s. If they're truly a contractor, you can 1099 them. It's not which one's cheaper for me. And I know I've taught people. And
that's a whole other podcast. I think that deserves to be our next podcast, man.
I know how much money we would save in a year, or the tax credit we'd get in a year on tips. I mean, it's significant. But I'm still going to do it because it's the rule right now.
Follow the law that you're enforcing.
People say, "Oh, well, we're going to put an ATM in our thing, or we're going to have them all taken." It's like you now, as an owner, going down a dangerous road by just telling all your staff to take their tips privately, and just don't tell me. Just don't tell me.
I just don't want to know. Yeah.
Right. That's not an excuse.
So guys, I think we are going to do another show. We need to do a 1099 versus W-2 show where we're actually working behind the scenes on a test you can take that says, are you running a legal salon? Like, are you operating properly, and actually being able to test side by side, or should you be 1099? Are you W-2? And ask them some questions to help you figure it out. Because I think a lot of people are running it the wrong way just because they don't understand or have never been told. We want to help educate the industry, elevate the world's perception of what we do every single day in this industry, because it is an absolutely beautiful industry, and it deserves the most respect humanly possible. But you need to play the game the right way. So thanks guys so much. Do me a favor and type in the chat if today was helpful. Type in the word helpful. If you want access to our W-2 test, do me a favor and put that in the chat. We're working on that over the next couple of weeks, and that might be launching very soon. And then on our next podcast, maybe we'll do a W-2 versus 1099. Thanks so much for being on today. Doug, as always, thanks for having you here today. Have a good week, guys. See you soon. All right, bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Evo Revo podcast.
Today's podcast was brought to you by Salon Scale, allowing you to charge by what you know, not by what you feel.
Please subscribe, leave us a review, and you can always get more information, including show notes and the video episodes at evorevopodcast.com.